Yo guys, in this video I'm going to explain why some zones work and why some zones don't work. So we already know all about the daily liquidity, why I use it. Maybe some of you guys know, some of you maybe don't know, but I'm going to explain why some zones work and why some zones don't work. For example, today, this zone, it doesn't work. And you know why? Because this is still a daily liquidity low. It's not the daily liquidity low that we prefer. We always want the previous daily liquidity low. It's more fresh. It's just a better liquidity point. But you can see this as well as a valid liquidity point because it's a daily low. And you see it made a zone. And what's sad about this zone, it's on the bottom of a move of a pullback. So we also know it's um, that underneath here is a liquidity pool. So most likely what's going to happen, it goes to this zone. It most of the time it just gives a fine rejection like here, but because it's the lowest zone, it's going to get through because it still wants to sweep this liquidity point. So for example, we see this zone. Yes, it is a daily low. It is a daily liquidity low, this. But why is this valid and this isn't valid? Because this is the move, the start of the move. So this daily liquidity is valid as a daily liquidity, of course, but it's also valid as a zone because the liquidity pool is most likely to be underneath here. And this is a big gap. So if the market makers or whatever you guys call it, if they want to sweep these orders, is is most likely happening with news or maybe some other instances. But for the zone, this is valid, this is not valid. This is a valid zone, and the reason is it's not a daily, it's not nearby a daily liquidity low. So this is a valid zone. Oh, and I am going to search for some examples, like here on gold. It's tapped, but that doesn't matter for now. We see this is a daily liquidity low zone. What happens? It still respects the zone, but it goes to the zone and then it goes up. So what you can do, I've never tried it, but it probably can work, that when it goes to the zone and it not completely goes to the zone, it just wicks, you can enter after it leaves the zone. So like for example after this candy after this candle, when it closes, you can just enter. You can just enter, place your stop loss underneath it, and target 1 to 3, 1 to 2, whatever you want, and it's fine. But you don't want the supply and demand of the bottom zone that's nearby a daily liquidity. So this one is not fine. This one is also not fine. And for here now, there is no valid zone. So this is a valid zone. Here, this is a valid zone. Also, fair value gap is created. It's already mitigated, but it is a huge move. This is valid, and we see this happen a lot of the times. Like for example, here, this is basically our strategy. We see the daily liquidity getting swept. We see the zone. We see it's getting swept with the zone. The wick gets through the zone, but the candle closes inside. And then we see price going up. And you see this happening over and over and over again. And now we know it. We maybe in the beginning it's a bit difficult to find those zones and to actually think about it because sometimes I forget it as well. And I also have to tell you that I don't use it always, but you're gonna use it always because it's just an extra confirmation. And you will see most of the trades that lose, you used the bottom zone of a move, and that doesn't work. But it still works, of course, from time to time. Like everything does work from time to time. But you want to keep it as, yeah, as close to the strategy as you want. And why I basically didn't use it for a while was it most of the times it's still, um, how do you call it? It's it's still getting respected by the price action. So basically, when it just stops and it wicks out, it was always fine. But since I was looking at UC, you see it also. It happens a lot. Like for example, this is a middle zone. We see the daily liquidity. It touches it and it goes down. And man, it happens so many times. Like you see it here, daily liquidity low or daily liquidity low with a zone. It's a precision zone because this is the whole wick. Wick is above the next candle. You see, it gets respected, but this was probably with the news. Yeah, it was with the news, but that's fine. But you see, it gets kind of respected. It sweeps the daily liquidity low, but it still didn't go up. It did go through, and that's probably because it's a daily liquidity low. But also, it's really logical. It's really logical if you think about our strategy. We want a daily liquidity high or low to get swept before we enter. And this is basically the same principle, only we don't look at it that way because it's most of the time if this happens, we just don't enter because most of the time the candles the body of the candle closes inside the zone. So that's probably most of the time why we don't use it. So what we want is price goes up. Oh, this is the wrong thing. Wait. Price goes up. You can see every point as a daily liquidity low. We don't want a zone here. We don't want a middle zone. We I know this is valid, a higher zone like the 0.3, I don't know what you call it, but if you look at the Fibonacci, I do not use it a lot, but sometimes if it's not that clear how deep the rejection is or the pullback, it's fine to use it. It's just an extra tool. But if you look at that like this, you see the zero point 0.5 is here. The so if the zone is around here, it's fine. If it's around here, it's not fine. If it's around underneath the zero point 0.5, so like in between the 618, 786, those are considered the best. But you don't want the outer zone because most of the times, as you saw, they get swept. So that's why we don't use them. And with the strategy we use, for example, here price comes back, creates a new daily liquidity low. We want it to go up to sweep its own high. Then it comes back and it goes back up. And basically this movement, this, you call an inducement. So if you don't know what it is, look it up on YouTube, but it's basically that the high gets cleared from the liquidity. So they cleared out the liquidity to go up. Then it cleared the liquidity from the sell side, and then you go up. That's basically what it is. So hopefully I cleared some things with the zones and the explanations. If I didn't, just ask me some questions, and I'm going to try to explain it better. For me, this is also new. I never did this, so yeah. Hope this clears up some things. So have a nice day, boys.